What's up guys, Americana back here with another video. Everybody is calling for the cycle top to be in, but this is not how it works. Here's how the real top actually arrives and why this isn't it. Alright guys, you've seen this chart before, so we'll go ahead and start here, but we're also going to tie in some of the other concepts we've talked about this week. I'll make sure this video comes out last, but make sure you've watched some of my other videos that have come out earlier in the week, so this video will kind of make complete sense and wrap all of those things up together. But like I said, the top is not in. The top is not in. The top is not in. So many people have been calling for the top to be in. That's simply not how it works. When the majority of people are saying that a top is in, or it's a popular opinion to say that the top is in, that's what's getting the likes, that's what's getting the shares, that's what's getting the retweets, that's what all the big accounts are posting about, that's what the news is covering, things like that. That's never when tops come in. The tops always come in when people least expect it, right? I'm by no means a big channel, so it doesn't really apply to me. But if even the biggest channel you can think of, right? Even if Raul Powell came out and was like, the crypto top is in. If that isn't what people want to hear at the time, it's not what's going to get likes, it's not what's going to get shares, it's not what's going to get retweets. So inversely of that, when people are calling for a top left and right, and that's what's getting all the attention, that's never how tops come in. I know that's kind of a sentiment-based indicator or kind of take on the subject, but I think it's a good place to start, and it's a good general assumption to have, as you're scrolling throughout the day, or as you're looking across social media, if you're seeing a lot of the same things come up. Definitely, obviously, dive into some of the data behind it, which we're going to cover in this video, just to kind of like general filter. As you're scrolling through, you can kind of assume that, hey, if nobody's calling for, or if nobody's, if everybody's calling for a top and everybody's agreeing with it, and I'm looking at the comments, it's probably not actually going to happen. So I know it's a little bit of a rant, but let's dive into actually what's on chart here. So what we have here is the 2018 kind of back end of the bear market, all the way to the explosive top in the altcoin market. Wasn't all too explosive in Bitcoin, but the top of the Bitcoin market, as well as the bottom here in 2015 out to the top in January of 2018, sorry. And if we line that up with this cycle bottom we have here and kind of extend it out, where does that get us? It gets us this kind of like October, November kind of style of top that we have been expecting. And if we're expecting that, if we're expecting some sort of explosive move in the altcoin market, an explosive move in Ethereum, we would expect Bitcoin to, at least be holding up. I'm not saying it needs to go to 150K, 200K, 250K for us to get the kinds of moves we want to see in the altcoin market, but we do have to have some stability and most likely, some sort of new high come in, even if it's not overly explosive. So just based on that, just based on what we're seeing in the macro environment, just based on all the work the altcoin market has done to get us back to a level like this, we can assume that the top is not in. We also know these tops mark, the most euphoric moments of the cycle. I don't know about you guys, haven't felt too euphoric thus far. Been happy with what we've seen. We've seen exactly what we've wanted to see. But, having these final 2 months, if we're counting September, 3 months, right, to kind of work out some sort of exit pump in the market is my base case. And we'll cover kind of some of the stuff we're seeing in the altcoin market right now. All right, so let's go to this chart right here. And again, this is something that I covered in other videos this week, so we won't dive too deep into it. One thing we talk about is this crash, retrace, reaccumulation structure that we see, typically with this V bottom and then getting back to the all-time highs. I cannot find an example, I'm sure there is one out there, of this failing. So if we're looking at the altcoin market, if we're looking at Ethereum doesn't do everything that it's done for the last 4 years just to get back to this point and then roll over. It's just not something, it's not a structure that plays out in markets, in any market, across any asset. We typically, when we get this crash, retrace, reaccumulation, we typically do see expansion. And if we're going to see expansion, we can assume that the top of the market is not in. Again, I dive into this deeper in other videos this week, so check those out as well. But here's just another thing backing it up besides, kind of the timing and things like that. All right, so I did want to give you kind of some hard data to back up what I'm talking about. And like I said, as you'll see in other videos this week, there's more data backing this stuff up. And as you've seen in all of the videos that I've covered, right, over the last 2 months, I kind of have been talking about the same things, expecting to see the same things that we've been seeing, and what we've been expecting has been playing out, and all of it is pointing to some sort of massive rally in the altcoin market. If we're going to get that, we can assume the Bitcoin top is not in. So I'm saying all of this to say, don't let anybody tell you that the top is in. Go check out the data for yourself. Analyze what's happening in the altcoin market, what's happening in the stock market, what's happening in the macro environment. Not just, hey, Bitcoin's price is down 10, 15% from the all-time high, the top must be in, right? These markets end in euphoria, they end in explosion, they end in just massive assumptions of risk by retail investors. They end in these crazy explosive ways, and we've seen everything line up and point to that. So just because we get a dip while the altcoin market is trying to work some things out, I'm not going to get overly bearish. All right, guys, that's it for this one. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Again, don't let anybody tell you the top is in. The most explosive phases are yet to come, and especially if you're an altcoin holder. So if you guys have any questions, just make sure you drop them in the comments. As always, I appreciate y'all's support. I appreciate the comments, likes, new subscribers. Make sure y'all check out my other content. All of my stuff is very forward looking. Now we're kind of getting towards the end of the cycle where everything has to be, pointing to that November kind of end. But a lot of the stuff that we were talking about in April still backs up claims that we're seeing now. So make sure you check out a lot of my old long form content. There's a lot of good kind of hidden gems in there as well. But yeah, I appreciate the support, and I will catch you guys in the next one. See ya.